all of a sudden, one of our larger clients, that client went bankrupt. And unexpectedly, hindsight is clearer than 2020. Right? Hindsight is the most obvious thing in this world, because as we were working with this client, they were always late on their invoices.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Journey to Freedom podcast. I'm Dr. B. I am your host, and I am, as always, just so excited to be talking to folks that are making it work. It was funny. So Dominic and I were talking before the show, and he was asking me, well, what is Journey Freedom? Why is Journey Freedom important? What does it have to do with the things that I do and the businesses that I own? And so Dominic, just so kind of give you a glimpse of the show and what. So about a year and a half ago, I went to a seminar in Minnesota, and the seminar was called The Trusted Edge, and it was about how do we lead with trust? How do we trust each other? How do we trust ourselves? And how important it is to be able to trust. And I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of business questions in a little bit, where like, how do you trust in business? How do you obtain a business and know that the people are selling you right? And so I go to there, and I look in the room, there's 500 people in the room, and there's about 30 people that are people of color. And I'm going, okay, so this information is incredible. This information is great. How do I get this into the hands of our community, into my community? And so I came back, and through some prayer and some other stuff, I realized that I was saying, God, do you want me to work with people of color? And he said, no, I want you to work with Black men. I said, but I don't want to work with Black men, guys. He's like, no, this is what I want you to work with. And so last year I was able to because you can't argue with God, right? You could try, but you're not going to get away with it for very long, right? And so last year I ended up interviewing 105 Black successful men from all over the country. We've done another 40 this year. You're in that mix somewhere where we're getting able to talk to men, so other of us can see that what it takes to be successful. Yesterday, I went to the state capitol here in Colorado. I'm in Denver, Colorado, and we were talking about, with all the crazy stuff that's happening federally in our country, and I'm sure you're in DC now, so you can kind of understand all the things and the taking away DEI and all, wherever you stand politically. And, one of the things I was saying is whether it's Trump or Elon or whatever, they're not going to steal my joy, and they're not going to stop us. Opportunity is the key for our success. And as long as there's opportunity, we're going to find ways to be successful. You can take away just about everything, but as long as you don't take away our opportunity, we're going to find ways to grow and be successful. And there were so many people that I met and talked to, and over the last few weeks that have this attitude of fear. Where fear and lack, where there's not enough resources and there's not enough out there. And I'm sure being from Angola and being you kind of understand the amount and the plentiful of resources, at least that we have here, an opportunity that we have here. And when we approach things with lack, is it the world? The God that I serve is a God of abundance and a God that allows us to have opportunities. And when I see you, Dominic, and I see, hey, I have a ranch in Texas, and then I have another ranch in New Jersey, and I'm living in DC, and I'm a businessman, and I'm making life happen. That tells me right there, it's not the opportunity that's lacking. It's our connection or access to it, or the understanding or the education that allows us to do that. And so you get to be on the, I'm honored to have you on this show. Because I get to glean, and when I was saying get to, that was meaning me. I get to be selfish, and I get to learn more about what it takes to be successful from your eyes. And so I'd love for you to tell your story, how you got here, how you were able to purchase and buy businesses and become a successful man. I don't believe you're 80 or 90 years old. You don't look like it. If you do, then I want to know what that secret is. But I think you're younger, so you've been able to do it at a young age. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for being on the show today. And please go ahead and tell us your story.
Dr. B, thank you. Yes, very excited to be here. Thank you for having me, and your audience. Thank you for sharing this hour of your day with us. So I'm excited to let you guys know a little bit about me and my story, and hopefully I can provide some sort of value to whatever journey everybody else is in. Um, what I kind of start off, where I start off is I'm 35, just so that that's out there. I'm not 80, but I'm 35. But I was born in Angola, Africa, and I came here early 90s or mid 90s. I'm sorry, or late 90s, 1996 or seven. And that was strictly through the efforts of my parents, obviously. And my father studied hard. He was into satellite telecommunications engineering, and he had a skill set that allowed us to leave a situation, a war-torn country, and make it here in a more prosperous environment. Albeit still had its challenges. Obviously, the history of Black Americans was very prevalent still. But everything that we knew about America was that it had opportunity, like you said. So throughout the 2000s, it was a little bit tough and difficult being an immigrant and being an African immigrant, especially just in the form of self-confidence and how people interact with you and learning a new language and, just learning a new culture. But I did what so many of us try to do is try to assimilate, try to blend in, try not to stand out. I wanted to not be known as the African kid or the African, I wanted you to not notice me. And to my detriment, as I would find out later on in life, where it pays to stand out. And so throughout high school and everything, I just knew I was different, but not strictly because of my um, my upbringing, but or right where I was born, but also because of the upbringing, because I was reinforced in the thought that you are a guest here, right? Like that, I have my opinions in politics and social economics and so many things that we as a community can do better. But I've always realized that nothing here, my time here isn't a given. I'm a guest here, and I do have a community back home that I owe the the tutelage of doing well here in some degree to bring up my community as well, my home. So it's like don't focus on party while all your friends is running around partying. Like you remember, you got to keep your head straight. You got your journey is different, your story is different, and while I grew up in Philadelphia, so Black kid in Philly, of course, was around certain things that's just what I knew. I never got in trouble, but that was almost a struggle in itself to staying away from some of the trials really of growing up in the hood, to be very honest. But it was really I really reinforced that to young kids now, and people who have young kids, make sure that they know that life is greater than those first 15, 16 years, right? Like there's so much more, and sometimes we didn't see that until I got to college, Penn State. That was the first time now coming from. Remember, I came from Africa, went to Philly. I lived in a neighborhood which was 90% Black, and everybody was just struggling. And we were all it was a collective struggle. But we were making it. And then I went to a majority white school. And I'm like, wow, these Brads and Chads are very, like, seems like they're doing pretty all right. I mean, like the conversations were different. Now we're talking about, just I started to realize, their family's journey and story is not better, it's not worse, but it's different. And my parents had instilled in me that I needed to make my own path, that I needed to be financially savvy and literate. And I came from a system. Angola is known for corruption. The continent is so rich with wealth, but it struggles to maintain it. And it has it in the hands of a select few. So it's like nobody's going to give you anything, right? And you may get more from where you're at as a guest than you will from your home country. So as I'm talking to these guys, I'm starting to understand how some families, you can read it in books all you want, but until you start seeing it, that, oh, wow, people have used this generational wealth to advance, and how this person here now is getting college paid for or subsidized or helped in some way by the savings of his parents, and the next generation is going to, snowball into that success. What was happening for me though is because I had, I was an immigrant, I was having a hard time I didn't qualify for federal grants at that time. So I was having a hard time even trying to figure out a way to pay for school. So I was trying to find little jobs here and there, paying for school out of pocket because I just didn't have too many other options. And what I decided was I was taking a web development course and an application development course. And that was the start of what later would become my technology company. But I started just doing websites for $500, for a small business or a friend who had a project that they needed a website for. So I was doing these websites, $500 here, $500 there, and it was just helping out. Eventually, I got pretty good at it, and I could charge $1,000 or $1,500. I started doing that so much that I formed a company that just focused on that while I was in school. And then all of a sudden we started growing a little bit. Global Computers and Networks is the name of my technology company. We ended up growing and doing government contracts. We not only focused on websites, but we did cybersecurity, we do network design. And then we started getting clients because I had a fervor and just a passion where you couldn't tell me no. Whatever you needed from a technology standpoint, I was chasing it. I was hungry. And we are some of our largest clients, at that time was Starbucks, Google, IBM, the Darden Group, which is who are those? Olive Garden, Red Lobster, and those guys. So we were managing their local network, even though they have a national team. We were their on the ground team. And then we got into the world of government contracting, and I was just reading incessantly, like, how can I get into government contracts? There was a point that we were doing just several $1 million a year in contracts and government contracts in technology and logistical engineering. So just helping the government get material from one place, right? One vendor that's in one city to another, and mixing these vendors together. And that might be a project that we did was robotic. We did robotics for the government. Obviously, our company designed, coded, and built certain robots, but really there's a lot of companies involved in that. There just wasn't me and my staff. It was 6, 7 other companies, and that was part of what the contract is, to really mesh all that together for a final product. So we were getting into that, and this could be a whole podcast just about government contracts, the highs and the lows, because it's great when it's great, and it's just bad when it's bad. As some vendors are finding out right now, right?
I bet.
Yeah, because it costs a lot of money. The government is such a big consumer that they have their rules, and unless you're a big company that with leverage, you're not making any demands. They're telling you, we're going to pay you this when we pay you, and it's typically it's scheduled out. But if you're doing a multi-million-dollar project, which we were so happy and elated to get these contracts, you got 1 or 2 contracts. Well, now I didn't put 2 and 2 together right away. I mean, you have some sort of notion, but you're out millions of dollars for a couple months. I'm like, whoa. And now the government's not fronting you money. They're like, no, we're going to pay you whether it's a net 30 or, after the performance, after the delivery. It's like, wow, and then there might be one vendor that just wants their money right then and there, or it's just so many complexities, and large companies can modify their contracts, can leverage. Boeing is always behind on their deliverables, and Google and AWS can always change their terms of their contracts. Me, no, they didn't care what I had, what issues I was having. So that was very telling, where I thought I had hit a gold mine, literally and figuratively. And ultimately it was like, oh man, maybe I'm not doing something right here, right? Like, I know companies are making a lot of money from it, but we don't want to over leverage ourselves here. So as I'm noticing that, and now my company is growing, and I'm having kind of these debates on what we should do with our government contracts, and figuring it out, because it's national. It's just national contracts. So you're everywhere. We're flying everywhere, working with international vendors, and it was very challenging. But all of a sudden, one of our larger clients, like I mentioned, we were doing some larger project, and we were the ground support for a lot of national brands. That client went bankrupt, and unexpectedly. And hindsight is clearer than 2020. Right? Hindsight is the most obvious thing in this world, because as we were working with this client, they were always late on their invoices. And if you run a business, everybody might be different, but when you're running a business and you're focused on something, you're so intently, I'm an engineer by trade, so I was just focused on the engineering aspect of running my business. Where if somebody's behind 15 days, 20 days, it wasn't. You can't focus on everything, right? Like, okay, we sent the invoice, they'll pay. We know they pay, they're late, but now they're 15 days, but they paid before. Okay, now they're 30 days late, but they've paid before, Then they got to, once you're like, how did we let them get to 60 days late or 70 days late before?
Oh, God.
Right? Like before, because and then you start to realize, if you haven't been challenged that way before, we were still doing work, and we were, they were paying little by little, but never the large invoice amounts. But we didn't want to give up the work. And then you start getting challenged into realizing, well, do we keep trying to work with them, or do we stop doing the work? Even if you stop doing the work, now you have all these outstanding invoices. Do you send a demand letter? Do you get a lawyer involved? Will that sever your business relationship?
Yeah.
Like I said, this is like these questions that you're asking, or is it just a lapse in their business because they're such a large company? You think, maybe we're just a small account, but for us at that time, we were, every dollar helped. And when I realized that we were over leveraged with that client by a couple, over $100,000, and I'm in my early 20s running a technology company, that this company is growing, but our margins are low, and a lot lower than they should be for technology. But I wanted to make sure that we were always profitable, but we're not seeing this startup success story that we hear about so much in Silicon Valley, and all these startups where overnight they're worth millions and tens of millions of dollars. No, we're profitable, but I had some technology employees making more money than I did. I was like, man, how feeling sick. Yeah, and that's very common for founders, where you have this equity, but your cash flow is poor. So with that hurdle, and this is around the year 2014, I was trying to figure out, all right, where could we do better? We over leveraged a little bit because we were allowing a lot of outstanding invoices that we couldn't control. So we needed to tighten up there. And I linked up with a new accounting firm and bookkeeper in-house to make sure that all the work that we did was actually getting paid back to us. And then we had to understand, we didn't want to get crushed under our own weight and in our growth strategy. So we couldn't take on contracts that were too big, and I had to extend out too much because it was just like a domino effect. So I was really just wondering what I was going to do with the company. It was an existential crisis for us. And we were working. We were working on just the clients that we had, and I was working day and night, making sure I was our after hours support team. Right, I was no longer able to maintain, overnight support. So I decided I'm going to take those calls at night, and I slept with my laptop open. Right now, for one of our overseas clients or 24/7 clients ping me at night. I just wake up and jumped on that chat like, yeah, we'll fix this issue. And I knew that wasn't sustainable, but it was just a life raft that I was looking for an answer to a problem. In that, I was working with one client of ours. It was a law firm out of Philadelphia, and they really liked how we managed their Philadelphia office. And we were a young, energetic team. And the owner came in one evening, and they were seeing everything that we were doing, and I was working late. It was the building was closed at the time, and he was just surprised that we were just so headstrong. Me in particular, so headstrong on getting their project done before their deadline and their launch. And to me, it didn't matter that it was 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. I was going to get it done. And I had a conversation with him while he was in the office. He says, "Man, you've been managing our Philadelphia office, with such zeal. How do you think we can do that for our other offices in Texas? All right, how can you help us find whether it's a vendor there or whatever in Texas?" I was like, "Man, okay, yeah, fair enough. We can do that. I don't have my team in Texas, but maybe I can come and help for the time being." And again, I'm saying this confidently and with poise, but I know I have a cash flow problem with my company. So I'm like, yes, we'll take any contract. Send me anywhere. All right. Like, we will figure out how to get, especially when it's in our lane, when it's something that we know how to do. We didn't know with some of our other contracts that we were doing, there were new problems every time, especially with the government contracts. They were presenting new problems, and so it's hard to engineer the solution on the spot. But I already knew if you just want somebody to do the same thing we're doing for your office here, but for a couple other offices, yes, we can. So, but he let me know that they're doing an aggressive push to grow the company and the firm, and he wanted to know if I could. And I don't know that he really realized that I owned the company, because he mentioned how soon can you get there. And how soon do you guys need us? And a week later, I think that day, less than a week later, I'm on a flight to Texas with a backpack and a carry-on. And I told my manager up here, "Hey, you manage the office over here. Let me go and check out if we can expand into a Texas market," because we were looking to expand anyways. And I went out to California. I didn't like the culture out there per se. At the time in San Fran, it was just more expensive than I would like. We looked at opening our office in DC because we were still out of Philadelphia, but the talent pool in Philadelphia for technology and the opportunities just weren't there. But DC, since we were doing a lot of government contracts, was something we were heavily considering. So I was already looking to move to DC, or at least our office and our operation to DC. So when he said Texas, I'm like, well, we haven't signed a lease yet, so let me go check out what you guys got. And I flew to Texas, stayed in an Airbnb, which I was very used to because I traveled a lot for work at that time. So I was used to Airbnbs. I was like, okay, great. I got there and we worked out where now, fast forward, I'm the technology director for the law firm. So now I own my company and I'm a director for this law firm. And I did decide to downsize the size of my company a little bit because we were growing. Like I the money in the pocket was not reflective. So I downsized, and we became more profitable. We just and we stayed focused on just the thing that we were really good at. And so we were operating out of Philadelphia and Texas, and I started a team there as well. And we started now just focusing on certain things like building applications. So it wasn't everywhere. We weren't installing computers. We weren't we weren't doing AV and cybersecurity. We were just really focusing on building applications, and that came into play later. And building applications for companies and enterprises. So as the wheels were turning and things were getting smoother, I didn't want to make the same mistake that I made before, where I was over leveraged on one thing. So I didn't. And again, being an immigrant, it's not the easiest thing to go to the bank and get a $2 million loan. They're like, hey, can I get a $5 million loan? I don't know what I thought this was gonna be, but I remember going to Wells Fargo with a signed contract from the United States Department of Defense for a couple $1 million. I said, I have 60 days to complete this contract. Can I get a loan for a couple $1 million? I don't. I left out of that thing. That was gonna go smoother, but they looked at that like I had drawn with crayon on a white piece of paper saying man needs money, right? So I was like, all right, let me make sure that I don't just put all my eggs in one basket, technology thing. And now we're stable. So what do I want to do? Well, like I mentioned, I was staying in Airbnbs my entire time there. And I knew I was paying decent money. My company's paying me to stay in different places as I travel and so forth. And what I wanted to do is I was listening to a lot of investment podcasts, and everybody's talking about real estate, getting into real estate, blah, blah, blah. And what people know me as, just so your audience knows, is I'm a serial entrepreneur. Okay. And it started with yeah, exactly. Right. And I encourage it. I'll tell you this, you'd probably be richer just focusing on one thing, but I think it's more enjoyable, I get more fulfillment in exploring multiple things that I enjoy. And I was reading a lot about real estate and listening to a lot of podcasts, and I found this, house hacking strategy. And ultimately, I bought a property in Austin, Texas. I just felt that the city was going to be growing. All the indicators said that this is going to be a city that's growing. So in around 2017, I bought a 4-bedroom home. Right, I stopped and rent. Typically, my apartment I was paying $600 for an apartment at a time, or an Airbnb for a room. I was just renting a room for $600 per month. And they were surprised. They're like, "Dom, don't you own a company?" Right? Like, you're seemingly more successful than this. I'm like, yeah.
$1 million contract. You had $1 million contract with this.
Yeah. And it was really like that. I'm talking to, officials and generals, and, some of my clients were rather big, and they'll send out a plane for us to travel just to fix some technology problems. And it's like, wow, this guy is something. He's growing, but he's paying the $600. I'm frugal. Please, you'll never see me. No. But from there, I bought a house in Austin, Texas. I felt that the city was going to really explode in growth because I saw the technology that was coming in from California, from other places. And I was like, man, let me set up some roots here. And as we have our company here too, I ended up buying a 4-bedroom house. And maybe the second month after I have it, I painted some stuff, cleaned it up. I just can't see myself ever buying a brand new home. I need to value add is the number one thing. And I started Airbnb'ing the other 3 rooms right away. And I started making it wasn't crazy a lot, but $2,500 in cash flow every month, just extra, and I just put that aside. And from there, I'm like, wow, this is great. It could either I didn't even put it towards my mortgage because when I bought the house, I bought it with the expectation that I could pay the mortgage without anybody being in there. Okay. So I put it just towards the savings because that year I used that for a down payment for my second home. And the second home that I bought, I knew that was going to be, and again, just a rental because I saw how successful my first one was. And when I bought it, it came with tenants. And now I bought this property that's coming with tenants. I got a pretty good, we got an aggressive deal because the previous owner needed to leave. So we got an aggressive deal. And at that point, because of all my research in business on how to, get credit, I understood the down payment requirements and all that. Long story short, when I came out to closing, I came out with a check for my first month's rent for my tenants. I said, wait a minute. I just bought this house and you're giving me money. You're giving me money to own this house. This is amazing. Okay. And then every month after that house has not been vacant. That was 2017, so 8 years later, and it's such a hot market, and I priced the rent so competitively that we haven't had a vacancy in that house for more than 5 days, 6 days, just to turn it over.
Oh, it's a great place then. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. I like to. I'm a stylish person, so I like to, we had 5-6 days. Really blistered, painted cabinets, did everything, and tenants were super pleased, and there's long-term tenants in there. And I made it a mission once I got that, which bit by this bug. Now I'm like, okay, the first, which is good and bad, because the first deal I did, I was cash flowing. The second deal I did was cash flowing. Why would I'm doing it again, roll the dice again. So I got into more properties, and I decided to just start buying properties, and not only single family homes, but multi-family homes in and around the area. The house that I bought, for example, they're always next to strategic locations, whether it's a large office complex. In Texas, we have the Dell Diamond, where all the Dell people work now. But you have UT, that the students are some of them coming from very wealthy families, renting these homes. You have a lot of hospital systems. So you need to be strategic about it. You can't just roll the dice and wish for the best. But I bought everything from single family, multifamily, and eventually got into apartments. I bought an apartment building, and now I have apartment buildings. Bought an apartment building out in the Poconos in PA, so a little ski area, and still, grappling with that. But of course, there is its goods and its bads, right? Like, because now I'm taking the cash flow that I'm getting from my business. I have a technology business, I have real estate, and I'm just reinvesting. But again, now I'm like, I don't want to ever get to that state that what if the market crashes? Now I'm holding all these assets in the same asset class. I may take a really big hit. So I diversified again, gotten a laundromat, and a restaurant. The restaurant didn't do so well at all. I probably would have never do that again, but it was a learning lesson.
No food.
No food at all. No. I learned a lesson. But it is a business, it's more vanity than anything, and just of love. I loved if I wasn't losing money on it, I would have loved it.
Everybody who owns a restaurant, right? They do it because they love the food. They love the atmosphere of a restaurant. They love bringing the folks in. But very few restaurants long term make a lot of money.
And I don't know where it was. Maybe just because my upbringing, food. It was very big in a lot of cultures, but in so many African cultures, food and organic and having your own garden. So all of these things played into who I was growing up. That was all the things that I've had growing up. So when I was able to see a little glimpse of expanding on that, I did. So I started a garden and I wanted to do this restaurant, chic, blah, blah, blah. And it didn't work. But we came out of there with some lessons. It wasn't terrible, but what I made some connections. I made some connections like with understanding how to buy meat, understanding, what my chefs and restaurant managers were doing. And there was once I don't even fully remember how I got into this, but oh yeah, I did. One of my clients after that, I got a client in Texas that was a ranch, and this ranch had these beautiful animals, and now I'm out there all the time, and I'm seeing these animals, and they're also they have a restaurant at the ranch, and I'm telling them about my experience with the restaurant. And one thing that came about is that they don't eat goat. A lot of Texans don't eat goat. I grew up eating goat, and I said, man, you should try it. We should try it. And there's a lot of goat farmers in Texas. A lot of goat farmers in Texas, and I don't remember exactly how the conversation came about, but as I was going to this ranch, I passed a goat farmer, but I noticed that he didn't have any goats anymore. Right? And it's like, but the signage was there. The sign was there, and I was like, okay. And I just got out because I was like, hey, I'm interested in buying a goat for us to cook. Right? Like, how do we buy a goat? And I talked to him. He didn't have any more, and he was telling me how hard that business is in Texas. And it dawned on me that the problem that so many of us have, that he had this asset and this resource, which was a goat, but he didn't have the market for it because a lot of white Texans don't eat goat, and this was a white farmer, and he's just like, man, no, we don't need it. I don't know. Excuse me?
I said, yeah, he's asking, what am I supposed to do with these goats? And you're like, I got a whole group of folks.
I got a whole community that is searching for this. And like, man, you can keep the goat soaps and all that other stuff. But yeah, so he's like, all right, man, I don't. So I said, okay, look, I don't have the time. I would love to get into this, but I'm not going to make the same mistake that I did with the farm, with the restaurant, which is just dive in head first. You seem to know how to take care of goats. I would like to maybe explore this business a little bit. And how would you say I get started? I'm just picking his brain, and it came to pass that he had a problem now because he had this land. He didn't have the market to sell. This was generation. Some of these guys are generational farmers. He didn't have the market to sell the asset, the commodity anymore, and the prices didn't make sense. But he needed to figure out a way to pay for the land still, right? And I was so many learning lessons there, because we think when we see somebody with a lot of land that this is amazing, and they're like, man, well, I don't know what to do with it. Right, like it's too dry to farm. You can't. I can't pay to irrigate it. It costs millions of dollars to maintain equipment, large scale equipment. So you want to start in a small scale. And a lot of these large farmers aren't even thinking about starting small. Everything they know is these big industrial.
Everything's big in Texas.
Everything's big in Texas. So I said, man, look, I have a couple people that would probably enjoy eating some goat. And we're not too far from Houston. I used to frequent Houston a lot. A huge African population, a huge, huge Islamic population out there too. So I'm like, look, why don't we go in this together? You have the knowledge and the land. I have the market, and I can bring in the goats. And we can just partner in on this, and it won't take you any more time, or I'll buy the feed. So ultimately, I ended up leasing his land, starting off with I think we started off with 4 goats, and just for me to really for me, friends and family, so to speak. That was it, kind of scaling it down from the restaurant, where before I loved having friends and family at the restaurant for a while. And then I started resenting it because I was like, oh gosh, these are losses that I just got to keep taking. But I still wanted to create that atmosphere. And when we just started off, but it was like there was a stop loss. I knew how much these things were going to cost me, not a crazy snowball of debt. So we agreed to it. And that was I was 3 years ago or something like that. And it went from 4 goats, now we're getting close to 200. Yeah. So pardon me. You gotta eat them. Yeah, but the demand is where and you start to realize. I was like, man, these things really multiplied. And the demand, and we're selling it, and we're and now they're a breeding flock, because they're selling it to other people. And once you solve the problem, and it almost looks like, man, how was he able to solve it without, and I wasn't able to. It seems so straightforward and so simple once you do it. So like, oh, well, no, you were just looking at the wrong demographic.
Exactly what it is. I mean, if you're going to have goats, you got to go where people want goats, not where
Exactly. So that was the thing. So now I have essentially my technology company still. I'm a director. I'm doing technology, and my real estate portfolio is growing. And I have these goats and I started and I started just thinking, all right, what's next? Like, how do I expand these goats? But there was one thing about Texas. My wife and I, our family is in the Northeast. And we knew that we wanted to come back. I was enjoying these things in Texas, but I really wanted to, as you're starting to have nieces, nephews, kids, people are being born, people are dying. We wanted to make sure that we appreciated the time that we did have with family. So we made the move back to the Northeast, where I was investing in real estate as well, and here in Washington, D.C., where we moved to. But while we were moving back, we may have stayed in Philadelphia and the New Jersey area. That's where our family is. I was always telling them about these goats in Texas. I was like, yeah, these things are awesome. And now I have the business for it. Texas is really dry and arid. So doing the vegetable farming probably wasn't going to work out. But I wanted to continue that. And I wanted to extrapolate more out of what I can do with agriculture. And that's how I got into, okay, well, you know what? I think I figured out how to work it down in Texas, and that's been really successful for me. I love what we're doing down there. And we've actually even increased I said we have close to 200, but we've added cows too, right? But that's been slow growth. We didn't go from 1 to 200 overnight. It's been a couple of years, and now it's like, oh, let's add cows, let's add feed. We know, we kind of understand that system. And I decided to do the same thing here in New Jersey, where I have some friends and family, and make it, the name of the farm is Theka Farms, a family journey. Because yes, I do look to make a profit, but really I tell people that you should, while you can, enjoy the journey. Right? Of course, there's going to be somebody that's going to tell you how to make $1 million overnight. They're going to tell you how to make $10 million overnight, right? They're going to sell you something. And then you start to wonder, if I was in that person's shoes, if I was boasting about my private jets and doing this and doing that, would I really be still flying all over the country doing conferences and speeches and going into all this? I know they're showing they're on vacation, but if you've ever, I'm a content creator myself. I like to vlog, and I do it for a job more than anything. So don't judge me. But no, I would really enjoy the fruits of my labor with the people that I love. So it's some things that these guys aren't telling us. And a lot of investors and successful people really aren't as successful. They kind of come off to be. All right. So yes, I did want to, of course, there was a time that, and we all have big eyes and want to be very successful, but I started redefining what my vision and my definition of success meant. And for me, I really love being outside. I love, agriculture. I love horticulture and just everything about animal husbandry, even though, and I say this knowing that I do it from a distance, right? Knowing that I do it with health. I do it with people
without putting your rubber boots on and walking in the mud.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see me out there with the compost, with the, I get my hands dirty, but I do have somebody that knows what to do, and I'm listening to them. And I'm like, okay. And so I don't try to pretend like I'm the smartest guy in the room or have all the answers, especially in things that I don't know. But so that's how the farm came about. So we bought a property that came available. It's a 400-acre farm out in New Jersey, and now just introducing it to the community, getting some ideas, some challenges there, a lot of challenges in doing business in New Jersey. I probably rethink that if I had to do it again, and but very different from Texas, I'll say that. But opening up conversations on, all right, how do we pivot? We wanted to do this. This is not possible right now. What can we get? Let's not just throw it all away, right? Like we can't farm what we want, or there's infrastructure costs. It costs a lot to set these things up, and it's a lot more than I was expecting. But we still are pushing forward. Now that's where we are today. I think we started off the conversation with you asking me, what am I most excited about? I'm like, man, we made some great improvements on the farm this week, and spring is here, so like we're going to be growing, and all that. So
is you and your family going to live out by? Do you want to live out where there's rural, or you still want to live in city and then just take care of rural?
No, yeah, we're going to live in the city for now, but I would love to maybe split time, right? But I do know that my wife in particular is a city girl, and no matter what, I gotta figure out a way to keep her happy. So she's been along with me and kind of allowed me to explore these things and supported me in it. So, but we're going to try to figure out a way to split time. However, that's where the challenge does come in. For us to comfortably live there, there's a lot of infrastructure challenges on a 400-acre property just to get electricity out there, are some pretty large checks, and water wells, and sewage tank, all that. So we're still sometimes away from that. And when that time does come, maybe she'll be. We got to start off with like, hey, we'll spend a weekend out there, right? And then I'll bring her back for 2 weeks, and then we'll see. Yeah.
But I'd love to know, because you are a serial entrepreneur. You got your hands in technology. You got your hands in agriculture. You got your hands in real estate. So to me, that means that you are doing stuff all the time. Yeah. How has that worked out in your relationship with your wife, with all the time you're spending doing? Is she okay with you being gone? I mean, how do you guys work that out where you're, or how do you work it out where you have time with your family to be able to do stuff? Because I know they're important.
Yeah, it's definitely. So with everything in life, there's a balance, and you have to understand your priorities, and you have to make sure that you put in systems in place. So of course, if I were there's somebody that's just doing one of those things or one thing that's putting in a lot more time, focus, and call it dedication than I am on all 3 or 4, right? Like, so I know what I want to put in. Now, here's a couple hard truths and realities of life. Most people don't work as hard as they think they do. All right. Like if you have ever really intensely put a good 8 hours of work in a day, right, where you're just locked in, right, cutting away the social media, you're locked in, you're going to come out of that day, even though it's behind the computer, you're going to be tired. Right? You're going to say, wow, and a lot of people, and now having had employees, and I'm like, what do you do all day? All right, like you you realize that their output just isn't that much. So once you start appreciating, how much time is in a day, all right, you and understanding that this is a journey, not a sprint. And there's the destination, of course, is important, but that's always changing. You don't have to feel like you have to do everything at one time. So I compound my priorities into something that is profitable. I don't feel like the farm needs to be make me millions and millions of dollars. I'm doing it because I love to do it and I like to do it. So even if I wasn't working, let's say I was retired, early as it might be, I might still find myself at a farm, right? I might still find myself walking. We have trails out there, and like it's kind of a beautiful place. So I do the things. The reason that I got my hands in these things is because these are the things that I like to do. I understand I'm still young enough that I can still have, and I need some sort of job and income. So I can't just enjoy these things with money going out without it returning something, right, to fill the pot. So that's where I changed my mindset to is, okay, what's the break-even cost? If this thing could just be self-sustaining, um, that would be a great thing. Then you start to get into profitability. But there is a certain number. I don't care, not what most people say. And look, life is dynamic. So you, as your audience hears me today, I know this is a Journey to Freedom podcast. Maybe in a year or 2 years, I might say, I want to retract that statement. But I've been around a lot of wealthy individuals. And when I'm talking wealthy, I mean wealthy, private jets, $50 million homes and plus. There is a level that you get to financially where it just doesn't matter anymore. Right? Like yes, we hear, I want to make 6 figures. Great. Matter of fact, and I think that number for a lot of people, believe it or not, I would say, and I hate to throw out numbers because they can be conflated sometimes if you live in New York versus if you live in middle of Rhode Island, right? But 200,000, call it that. Right? If you're making $200,000, you're not at the top of the food chain by any means, but you're not at the bottom either, right? You're not struggling per se. Unless you want to live in New York and in a pet house, then you're going to feel like you're struggling. But you can choose that. Those are choices. There's somebody out there that's making $20 million and still having to hustle because they're choosing to fly private everywhere instead of a business class. All right. Yeah. So for me, I'm starting to realize, okay, do I want more? Yes. But I want to make sure that it aligns with what, if I have a limited time left on this earth, with the enjoyments and fulfillments that I really want to get out of it, and not just chase the money to get to $100 million and then look back and like, okay, well, now what? All right. Like let's a little bit, I want to live without regret. So I say that to say, as far as the time, I invest my time into becoming successful in business, but really also just enjoying what I do.
Well, and that's what I'm hearing in, as I'm reading between the lines is you do well with your time of spending the time on the things that matter and not spending a whole bunch of time on distractions. Whenever I hear somebody who's being successful in several areas, I ask what distracts you, and it's not the same thing as distracts other people. I don't see you going home watching soap operas on TV or spending time at the water cooler talking to. What are some of the distractions that would take you away from what you're doing and your goals or the things you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, you definitely need some distractions every once in a while. I don't very much get distracted very easily. But now, I do like to spend time with my wife. She is my best friend. We love hanging out. So that's crucial and pivotal because we don't have kids. So we have that flexibility, and she gets involved in the things that I do, whether she likes it or not, right? Or whether I like it or not. Also, she bears some of that burden and celebrates in the success. So she and I spend quite a bit of time together. And what distracts us, if I watch a show, it's because she's watching it, right? Like I don't watch too much TV, but if she's watching it. I listen to podcasts a lot and a lot of audiobooks. Sometimes I like to do that to clear my mind, because you can't just be so honed in on something all the time, right? Like you're going to start to get depressed. You're going to get stressed. You need a way to just clear your mind. Now, granted, I do have, if I really had to change it, I'd probably spend more time on social media than I like, on the Instagrams and not really TikToks, but Facebooks and all that. But not how people think. I spend more time looking at like farm stuff. Spend a lot of time. Well, if you look at my YouTube history, it is all farm, how to raise goats and the next thing, right? So I'm enjoying taking in all that farm and agriculture information, also technology information. I listen to it when I'm on my phone. I'm watching other entrepreneurs or technology or real estate content. So that uses that as a distraction. I think it serves a dual purpose where I'm learning, but it's also very passive learning, so I can enjoy the content. But as far as just frivolous time spent, not so much. I don't.
Well, and here's what I really see. You know, there's I get
I write. I like to write.
Yeah, there's a split between education and what?
No, I said I like to write. I'm sorry, I like to write.
Yeah, oh, right. So okay, perfect. Yeah, there's a split between education and entertainment. Mm-hmm. And what you've kind of done, where your goals are in your process in life right now, is you're saying my education and entertainment are kind of together. I'm being entertained by being educated. Whereas a lot of people that are distracted, I have to be entertained. I have to be entertained. I love to be entertained. But when do they get to be educated? Right? Yeah. And then they wonder why they're not moving forward, because they're not investing in themselves to learn more, to be more educated. And so for right now, I love the fact that you're doing it all together, which is neat. And you're doing it with your spouse and your wife. And it's just amazing. What do you want folks to know? I mean, you're on the podcast today, and I'm loving you're on. We got a few minutes left. What did you? This was amazing, because it was an insight into business and how to be successful and how to get unstuck and how to take risk and all those things that you've been able to do. Is there anything else that you want to share? Websites or anything like that you want to have people know, or you just you're giving of yourself, which I so appreciate. But what do you want us to know as we depart today?
Yeah, I on social media, I am Ask Dom That. You can follow me there. My platform is all about financial literacy, self-help and motivation, small business and entrepreneurs, where it's practical business advice. I'm not trying to over fanaticize the world of entrepreneurship. So I get a lot of people asking me their questions. So if you have any questions, just feel free to ask Dom that on any of the platforms.
One thing I'd love to ask you, would you be willing to come back at some point and do a financial literacy of things you don't know or things you weren't taught? Like, I want to ask Dom, what does it really mean to have financial literacy, instead of what the little bit that we don't get in school, and then the even more that we don't get that's practical on how to run our lives? Because it seems like you figured this out. Even when I think of this man walked into Wells Fargo and asked for $2 million. So there's got to be something in your mind that's way different than other people's mind. You're like, hey, give me $2 million. And they're like, hey.
Yeah.
Question.
I would love to come back and talk specifically about financial literacy and all the opportunities that you don't even realize are out there. And that there's so much contradictory information. As somebody who consumes this information and as somebody who's in these rooms learning from people, I can talk to one person that tells me for example, just as a way as an example, get into these vehicles, investment vehicles of life insurance and annuities. And I'm like, oh, okay, that guy was really convincing. Then the other guy says, don't do this, right? This is historically bad. I'm like, whoa, it's almost like, how could two converging things work, right? Like, so understanding the principles behind it. And I really would love to talk to your audience without having a stake in it, all right? Like, without being a fiduciary to some degree, because so many people that we speak with have some sort of incentive to steer us one way or another. And that's always just bothered me when I do talk to people. And all I can do is tell you what's worked for me and what hasn't worked for me.
Yeah. I think I would love that. I know our audience would love it as well. And so I'll get with my assistant and have her make sure she talks with you. We'll have you back on. Thank you for sharing your story today. Oh my gosh, I'm excited because my grandpa had a farm when I was growing up, and I was out there and milking cows and doing all that stuff, and I ran away from that as far as possible. Yeah. But I like to see that there's somebody doing it from a distance and being successful at it. So I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you for being on today. For those of you who hit subscribe, you're going to want to know when we have this next episode that comes out. Hey, don't forget your God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. And we will look forward to seeing you on the other side of this. And so, again, Dominic, thank you for being on. We're going to have you back, and have a wonderful, just incredible day.